Nero started his morning the same as any other. He woke up in his bed, carefully pushed his covers to the side, and slowly but surely stood up, stretched, and looked around. His small little home was barely lit by the sun peering through the cracks in his window covers. He walked over to the small little windows, prepared himself, and opened up the shades to let the sun in. Without realizing, Nero had slept all the way until midday. The sun shone wonderfully into his hut, and he delighted in the way in which the sun's rays warmed his hands. He did have a tendency to get cold after all. Up next on Nero's very busy schedule, breakfast. Some days Nero would skip breakfast, but today he felt like grabbing some fresh apples off the tree in his yard and taking the short walk to the spring to fill up some containers of water. Nothing more refreshing than fresh fruit in the morning, Nero said to himself, taking a moment to appreciate the delicious apple. After some time pondering the day's thoughts, Nero decided to gather up his supplies and take a nice long walk through the forest. He walked out the door, looked back, and said, "I'll be back soon. Try not to miss me too much while I'm gone." He was, of course, talking to the house, but the house did not reply. And so, Nero began his walk. He passed by familiar trees, a few forest critters here and there, all the while humming a little song to himself. Nero was having a great day so far. It wasn't until hours later, as the sun began to go down, that his day got weird. All of a sudden, about 50 feet from Nero, something fell through the trees. It looked almost as if it was a small person. Nero immediately rushed over to the person, who he then recognized to be an Aarakocra. Nero did what he could, releasing healing magic from his hands to try and close some of the wounds. The Aarakocra was still unconscious and barely breathing, but alive. Nero carefully picked them up and slowly walked back to his hut. Gently, Nero placed them in his bed, bandaged what wounds he could, and covered the Aarakocra with his blankets. Nero breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that the stranger was safe. He took a second to wonder at exactly what might have happened, and then decided that it would be smarter just to ask them in the morning. Nero realized that he had no bed to sleep in tonight. He got down on the grassy floor of his hut and used some of his magic to create a small bed of moss to lay down in. "Surprisingly comfortable," he said to himself as his eyes quickly began to droop and slowly close, and he fell asleep. The morning sun shone brightly through his window. "Ah, geez, I forgot to close the window covers," he said out loud, forgetting the presence of his sleeping guest in front of him. Once he did realize, he tiptoed as quietly as he could to the bed and checked up on his guest. They seemed to be looking a little better, but Nero released more healing magic, just to be sure. As the magic left his hand, the guest began to stir in their sleep. Startled, Nero ran out of the room and closed the door behind him.
Where am I? What happened?
The Aarakocra said. "You fell out of the sky, but you're safe now," Nero answered, his head popping up into the open window.
Ah!
The person yelled, so startled they fell off the bed, and Nero rushed in the door.
"Oh, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to scare you like that. Please, stay in bed. You aren't recovered yet,"
shoving the Aarakocra back in the bed and under the covers.
What the hell is going on? Who are you? Where am I?
The person asked.
"Oh, that's an easy question to answer. My name is Nero. You're in my home. Well, I guess more specifically, you're in my bed. Less specifically, you're in the forest. Nice to meet you."
Okay then. Nero, nice to meet you. I'm Talia. I'm assuming you're the one who bandaged me up, so, thanks for that.
"Of course. I'm always happy to help a friend."
Yeah. Okay. So how long am I going to be stuck in this bed for?
"Well, now that you're good to go, you should be able to leave tomorrow morning."
Thank goodness. I need to get out of here as soon as possible.
"If you don't mind me asking, why the rush?"
Because if I don't, that thing will kill me.
Nero's head tilted slightly to the right, and he looked at Talia with a confused face.
The monster that attacked me and made me fall out of the sky? is something that doesn't stop until its prey is dead. If I stay here too long, it'll find me and get me.
If it won't stop till you're dead, what's the point of running from it? Won't it find you no matter where you go? Why is it hunting you in the first place? How big is it? What does it look like?
Too many questions at once. At least let me answer a few. Look, you seem like you're the helpful type, so I'll give you the information I have. I can't beat the thing. I ain't no fighter. If I get far enough away from it, I think I can get away for good. I'm not sure why it's hunting me. It just randomly started following me and attacking me. It's like this really big bird thing. It flies way faster than me. That's why I need to leave soon without it spotting me or finding me. Make sense?
Nero nodded his head, although he still looked pretty confused.
I'm gonna take that as a yes. Say, Doc, you got any food around here?
Oh, of course. What would you like to eat? I've got oats, apples, berries, honey, tea, water.
Slow down there, Doc. I'll take some oats, please. And some tea.
Nero quickly got to work on creating the meal. He first started a small fire, and then put the kettle in to get hot for the tea. He grabbed his oats from the bag, poured them into a small bowl, and took the hot water off the fire, and made some tea in his favorite cup. One of the first ones he had ever carved. He liked it so much because of the special wood he carved it out of. It really was a beautiful cup.
Alrighty, here you go. Just some oats and some tea. If you want to add some of the hot water to the oats, I can do that. I just wasn't sure how you'd prefer them made.
This is just fine. Don't worry about it. Thank you, Nero. Do you mind if I get some privacy for a bit? I don't like eating while people watch me.
Nero, without any hesitation, stood up, grabbed his backpack, and ran out of the door, shutting it behind him. Talia breathed a sigh of relief, only a moment later. Then, in the window,
I'll be back in a couple of hours, okay? And try to get some rest. It'll help you recover.
Nero walked off into the forest. He passed by familiar trees, a few forest critters here and there, all the while humming a little song to himself. He was happy to have made a new friend, and just wanted to give her some space. Unlike most days, he found himself wanting to go home more than usual, but since he had promised to be gone for a bit, he decided to find somewhere not too far away and take a nap. Luckily for him, he always brought a hammock with him in his bag.
It always helps to be prepared for a nap,
he said to himself. So, Nero set up his napping spot, got nice and comfortable, and fell asleep. He was awoken some hours later by a loud screech that sounded like a large bird. Nero rushed to his feet, abandoned his hammock, and sprinted to his house. He could still hear the bird as he bust through the doorway and found his scared guest in the bed. Nero didn't even look at her. He just looked around as if he was tracking the noises and where the beast was.
Nero, what are you doing here? This thing is gonna kill us both now! You have to go before it gets here. There's still time.
Nonsense, I would never abandon one of my closest friends.
We just met!
And that is why I will fight this beast.
Nero, you'll die!
Nero immediately turned to Talia and looked her dead in the eyes, more serious than he had ever looked, and said plainly,
I am not afraid of dying. Death is not the end of life, merely a part of the cycle. From death comes life, and from life comes death. There is nothing to be afraid of.
He then took one of the many mushrooms that covered his skin and handed it to Talia. Even she, knowing that the beast that had almost killed her the day before was right ahead, felt safe as he handed her this. She held the mushroom close and watched as Nero walked out the door, ready to face the beast head on. The beast landed in front of the hut, 20 feet away from Nero, staring him down. It was exactly as she described, a gigantic vulture, angry and ready to kill. Nero took a stance, no weapon or armor in sight, and began running at the bird full speed. As he ran, spores from within the moss and mushrooms on his body began to burst, and a cloud of dust formed around him. The beast tried to attack Nero as he got close, but he moved out of the way just in time, dodging attacks, as if he had done this his whole life. As the beast began to choke on the dust, Nero summoned large vines and weeds to hold the creature and stop them from attacking. The beast began thrashing, and eventually broke free from the vines, all the while still choking on the spores. The beast looked at Nero with fear in its eyes, and Nero shouted at the beast,
Either leave now and live your life, or die here and return to the soil. Either way, you will not harm or even come near me or my friend again.
The beast's face changed, almost as if it understood every single word, and flew off as fast as it could. It knew that staying would be a death sentence. Nero stopped the spores from spreading, waited a bit for them to dissipate, and began to walk back towards the house slowly. As he reached the door, he sighed and said,
Oof, that was a lot of running for me. Are you alright, Talia?
Yeah, I'm okay. That was crazy. How did you do that?
The moss and the mushrooms and I have a relationship, you see. They help me and protect me from harm, and I care for them and all other kinds of plant life here in the forest. It's pretty cool if you ask me.
They sat for a while, and Nero explained a little bit more about the magic and his connection to the forest. After a brief silence, Talia asked,
Hey, Nero? That stuff you said earlier about death. Did you mean it? Were you really not afraid?
When I was very little, both my parents got sick and passed from this world. For a long time, I was sad. I would sit outside, looking at their graves for hours every single day. Until one day, I sat down and looked, and out of the ground from where they were buried, sprouted some mushrooms. You see, fungi grow when something else stops growing. It was there that I realized that life is not linear. It's a cycle. My parents had moved on and become this mushroom. So from that day, I've been protecting mushrooms and plants. Maybe that's why the spores protect me, because they're my family. I'm not sure really. All I know is that death is not the end, and there's nothing to be afraid of.
Wow. I've never thought of it that way before.
It's getting late. Let's get some sleep, shall we? We've had an interesting day.
and so they put out the candles, got comfortable, and went to sleep. In the morning, Talia was able to leave the bed, and before she flew off back home, Nero gave her his favorite cup. That way she wouldn't forget him. They hugged, said their goodbyes, and parted ways. Nero was sad to see his friend go, but delighted in the idea that she was safe. And so, he went on a walk. He passed by familiar trees, a few forest critters here and there, all the while humming a little song to himself. Today was a good day.